we're going to talk about the aggregate demand and aggregate supply model, specifically focusing on the long-run aggregate supply. Now, this is not the focus of this model, but we do want to talk about this because it is a key component. So let's go ahead and graph out what we mean by the aggregate, by this model. So here we have our axes. Over on this the y-axis is the price level, again measured by CPI or GDP deflator. Here we have our quantity of output. Previously, we talked about the downward sloping aggregate demand curve. So here we have our aggregate demand, and check out that video for the reasons why this is downward sloping or what might cause it to shift. And now we're going to talk about our long-run aggregate supply. So in the long run, an economy's production of goods and services, its real GDP, depends on its supplies of labor, capital, and natural resources, and on the available technology used to turn these factors of production into goods and services. And so a country, if it's fixed the number of labor it has, capital, natural resources, and technology doesn't change, then the long-run aggregate supply curve is going to be straight up and down. So this is the long-run aggregate supply. Okay, and we might call this the natural level of output. And so in the long run, where these meet, this is going to be our price level. Okay, now let's talk about what might cause a shift in the aggregate demand. Well, if we think of the aggregate demand, or rather our long-run aggregate supply, if we think of what leads to how much we can produce, well, it's a function of the amount of labor you have, number of workers, the amount of capital, and the amount of natural resources. And then there's a term, or what we might call technology, that can convert labor, capital, and resources into output. So what would cause a shift in the long-run aggregate supply? Well, it's going to be these exact things. It's going to be changes in labor. So if we see an increase in immigration, that would cause the long-run aggregate supply curve to shift out. Or if we see a decrease in immigration, so let's suppose policies enforce immigration rules such that we see fewer immigrants in the country, that would cause our long-run aggregate supply curve to shift left. Or it might be the number of working age adults or things to that effect. Next is capital. So changes in capital will have an impact, as well as natural resources. So if a country discovers oil, then that would increase the long-run aggregate supply, or if they run out of oil, then it would decrease the long-run average supply. And the fourth thing we have is technology. As technology improves, then we can take the same amount of labor, capital, and resources and increase our output. So one thing that's really interesting to think about international trade is international trade can have a similar effect on increasing our long-run aggregate supply by simply importing goods that you are less efficient at producing. You can specialize in higher productivity industries and actually, through international trade, increase your total output. And so this is what we have for this market. So over time, as technology improves, or as we have changes in these other three categories, the long-run aggregate supply curve is going to shift out. And that would lead us to a new equilibrium right here. But over time as well, the Federal Reserve might be increasing the money supply, which would lead to an increase in aggregate demand through lower interest rates. And so we'd reach this new level of output where we would see an increase in GDP and we would see an increase in the price level. So over time, this is typically what the long run looks like, is we see long run increases in our GDP and we see year-to-year increases in prices, or we see year-to-year inflation. So this is the long run view of our aggregate demand and aggregate supply model, but it's the short run that's going to be most important. So in our next video, we're going to talk about the short run aggregate supply curve.